Hello there. Welcome back to Maybe Actually Museums Are For Me. Today I'm going to be joined by a friend of the podcast, my esteemed colleague, and our unofficial guest host of the show, Melissa Casale, to talk about what ended up being one of our favorite episodes to record, actually, a couple of developing stories around the art world over the past month. Last time we spoke about things like the multi-million-dollar banana, and yes, we're still not over that, and a few other topics. This week, we'll cover some of the, breaking art news and headlines which have grabbed our attention, especially today, as we record this on January 29th, 2025. I don't really want to waste any more time rambling because we have a lot of episode to get to, so without any further pause, we pose the question, what's going on in museums these days? Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Alex.
What's going on?
Same old, same old.
It's been a few episodes since you were on the pod.
Yes.
Did you miss it?
A little bit.
That's a lie. That's a bold-faced lie.
Well, I can't miss it because I know you'll always come back to me for an episode.
Yeah, I definitely, like I said in the episode that just came out with Audrey, where we talked about the collection shows and why it's important to do them and why museums do them and, what's going to be in our upcoming collection show. I kind of half jokingly was like, I think Melissa's getting tired of me asking the art history questions. So I might need Audrey to fill in sometimes when I go, how's this for an episode?
Well,
you go, stop it.
Well, I think a couple of times I pointed you in Audrey's direction. I'm like, ooh, maybe talk to Audrey about something.
Yeah. Listen, the last thing I want is this show to be a burden. So we try to keep it fresh and keep it fun. And the last time we recorded was with I think we talked about our DC trip.
Yes.
And then the time before that, we talked about the, ongoing like art news and stuff. And we talked about the $6.2 million banana, which was a lot of fun. And so I think one of the consensuses that we kind of came to is that when we do these kind of checkpoint episodes where it's the two of us kind of, doing, this is the routine. This is, I feel like, the very like normal standard episode. And we want to do things that we find some fun in. And I know you don't want me just peppering you with art history questions because that could very easily be the show. But alas, we wanted to kind of reapproach the news of the world and what's going on in the museum and art industry these days. And there's a lot going on. We wanted to do this episode maybe like 2 weeks ago, and there just wasn't. We just didn't find enough interesting headlines.
Yeah.
And this time around, there is so much happening.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on.
But to start, before we get into the two topics we're really going to kind of dive into, I thought it'd be nice to just kind of run down a very concise list of things that are going. So as I read this, Melissa, stop me at any time if you want further clarification or my 2 cents. British Museum running as normal after alleged IT attacks by a former employee. You shared with me this one. It's from Art Newspaper.
Yeah.
Talk about spite. Pretty crazy. Pretty funny.
Well, I feel like it's
not really funny. Not funny at all.
Well,
but
it's the fear of like there's gonna be an employee that comes back and they still have all like their credentials and everything in the system, so they can still access everything.
Yeah, it's just you gotta take care of that in the severance process.
Yeah, make sure he doesn't have access to the ticketing software.
Yeah, but alas, anyway. So the next headline is this is a pretty exciting one in my opinion. Antiques collector's $50 garage sale purchase might be a Van Gogh worth $15 million, and that's from The Independent. We've talked about ad nauseum, I feel like, just like privately between the two of us, like how much lost art of like the masters are there.
Yeah.
And, you get headlines like this every once in a while. I think there was one of a collection of Rembrandts. I think we might have actually talked about that in the last episode.
We might have referenced it.
Yeah, we might have referenced it. But yeah, it's like you wonder, like every time a treasure trove of famous artists are kind of rediscovered, you kind of wonder, was that the last batch? Like, are there really no more?
Yeah, when is it going to be the end?
Yeah, and like there's already so many Van Goghs in America nonetheless, because we have this fixation and we, definitely imported many of them during the turn of the century and then some. I think the largest collection of Van Goghs are in Detroit of all places, which is just kind of fascinating in itself.
Yeah, I also think it's like a wild dream everyone has that you find some old painting in your attic or someplace,
you're the one,
and it turns out to be worth a lot of money, or a lost master or something. It's like that's what everyone wants to happen when they have a garage sale.
Absolutely. I feel like every time it happens, it is a huge notable headline. I remember, I think I might have been in middle school or like early high school when somebody found, I'm pretty sure, Da Vinci like codex pages in like a behind like a in like a book or something. And I think the same for like copies of like very important like founding papers for the US. I don't think like the Constitution or anything, obviously, but like similar things like that have been discovered of note. It's fascinating. But alas, carrying on with our wacky headlines, thieves blow up a Dutch museum door to steal a golden helmet.
Did they actually steal the helmet?
I don't have a New York Times subscription at this moment, so I couldn't read further. This is just the headlines, Melissa.
Okay.
This is just the headlines.
Okay.
Again, New York Times couldn't read past the headline for this one, but I just thought it was pretty funny and a little bit more uplifting than the IT attack.
Yeah.
Googly-eyed bandit in Oregon comes forward. Essentially what I got from this, because I did a little bit further research, because I was so fascinated. Because who is the googly-eyed bandit? Simply, it's just a dude going around like Oregon who's putting googly eyes on like public art installations.
Oh, I think I might have seen pictures of something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. And he came forward. Fun. So pretty interesting. And then lastly, well, not lastly, because we have our two main topics we're going to really go into depth about. We just put out a statement on our social media and stuff, but I think it's important to, note the passing of Jane Quick-to-See Smith. She's just a remarkable path-breaking Native American artist. She's died at age 85. We are fortunate enough to have one of her works, War Shirt, in our collection. It was most recently on view back in 2023 in our show, Taking Space, Contemporary Women Artists and the Politics of Scale. Just a absolutely remarkable, incredible mind, and it's a real loss for the art world. So, yeah. On that note, I think it's time to kind of dive into our, broader topics that we wanted to get into. And I think, we'd be remiss not to discuss what I think is largely the most like not jarring, but like I think it definitely shook up, it broke into proper news, which doesn't always happen in the art space. But the Louvre is getting a renovation. Pretty crazy stuff considering I was there back in 2023, and from what I could feel and tell, I mean, it seems like the most pristine, prestigious, clean museum in the world. But alas, I guess behind the scenes there was a lot going on.
Well, you never know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And you did mention this to me a little bit before we started recording. So I started wondering, and I don't know if you have an answer, but I wonder when the last time the Louvre had like a major renovation was.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there has to have been like a modern or contemporary reworking, but I can say that, one of the things that they're planning on revitalizing is the entrance. They're going to put in an entrance near the Seine. Right now, the main entrance, which is the very famous pyramid that everyone thinks about. It's how I entered the Louvre, when I was there relatively recently. It was designed and built in the 80s. And essentially at that time, from what I understood from like the NPR article and PBS articles that were like reading, was that it was designed with the purpose of, pretty much dealing with 4 million people a year. It's, surpassed that number tremendously now. And, they can't keep up with it. And it's true. Like you queue up before you go in. There's all like stuff on like TikTok and stuff about like secret ways to get into the Louvre without a line, sure, you can do that. I found it. There was a line. It doesn't really matter.
And no matter where you go, there's going to be a line. Yeah.
So, essentially that's one of the main kind of focal points of it. But I think more prominently, and what is getting the most news, is that the Mona Lisa is getting a big old renovation. So essentially what they're doing is they're giving it its own exhibition space. Right now, as we all know it gets, poked fun at for being on a, people perceive it as very small. It's not a very small work. It is, a normal size painting on a ginormous wall.
It is like like you said, it's an average size portrait, but it looks very tiny, like you said, because of the wall space it's on, but also because you're at least 5 feet back from it.
Minimum. Yeah. And like, the other issue is like crowds are a huge issue. Obviously, like it's the most densely populated portion of the Louvre. I mean, I think I noted this in one of our earlier episodes when I was last talking about, my visit to the Louvre in 23, but essentially like you fight like hell to like get up close and, you spend 20 minutes in front of it because you feel like you have to. I mean, I felt like I had to. And then you walk out, you look around at all the other Renaissance masters that are on the walls, and you realize there's like 3 more Da Vinci's just sitting there that not many people are really looking at. What I noticed is because I was in and out of that gallery a lot, there would be moments where no one's in front of it. And then there'd be moments where people realize that there's another Da Vinci there. And then a crowd picks up and then goes away. It's kind of like Starry Night in that way, in the MoMA.
So I'm trying to remember because it's been a very long time since I've been to Paris and I've been to the Louvre and I've seen the Mona Lisa. But from what I remember, it's on like a wall in the middle of a room, and then there's stuff on the outer walls, like on the...
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's just essentially like in the middle of a room.
Yeah, it's in the middle of a room. There's nothing... Not that there's nothing, but there's pretty much like... It's when I say it's in the middle of the room, it is in the middle of a room. Like there's stuff on the other side of it. There's stuff...
It has to be like a temporary wall.
Yeah, it's like a faux wall that it's on. It's just massive and it's black and it's kind of an eyesore in a lot of ways. I mean, it draws your attention. Like you immediately know what it is because it's like, what other work? There's not a single work in the entire world that's getting that level of prestige and like, decadence. But yeah, essentially in, kind of with all of this spurring, there is some criticism, specifically coming from, specifically critics within the art world and, I think officials at the Louvre. There's been some concerns or, conflicting emotions about the rationale behind the update. A lot of people are saying that the Louvre doesn't need these updates. They simply think it's kind of for show, that President Emmanuel Macron is simply looking to kind of insert himself in these renovation projects. Most notably, of course, is Notre Dame, which, suffered the tragic fire and has since made a, near full recovery and is open to the public again. And I think Macron is kind of sort of riding that high, a lot of people feel. And, whether the Louvre wants it or not, he's kind of putting himself in the middle of it and kind of making it a staple of his presidency.
So did the announcement come from the Louvre or did it come from the president?
So the president did a press conference or a speech. I'm not sure which, but he spoke like there's a photo of him directly in front of the Mona Lisa. Like he did his speech from the Louvre. And I have a quote here from that, it's translated, obviously. I'm not my girlfriend. She's fluent. She would probably be able to, say it in French, but I'm not that talented. Essentially, he says, quote, "It's especially important to embody a spirit of innovation and boldness and think ambitiously in a new era where forceful rhetoric holds hypnotic sway over so many. The importance of culture and art is a message France must convey to the world. This is also a political battle." There's a lot going on there, obviously, and I think part of that speaks to the next thing we'll talk about, but we're not going to put the cart before the horse there. Obviously, we're still talking about this. I get it in a lot of ways. I know there's, rising concerns of, across Europe right now of, in Germany, there's right-wing parties that are rising to power. In France, the same thing nearly happened prior to like a flash election somewhat recently. So, critics might wonder, like, why put all this time and effort into culture and the arts? And I think Macron, rightfully says, well, because it's important. It's, it's culturally important. It's socially important. It's, also economically important. And I think the preservation of not only the Mona Lisa, which is obviously the most famous work in the world, but, you know, the institution itself is vital. I think it kind of, you know, when these things are left astray, unfortunately, things like the Notre Dame fire happen. And it's sad and it's scary, and you know they're trying their best to make it happen. So yeah,
I do have to wonder though if without the recent reopening of Notre Dame and the huge renovation project, if this mission with the Louvre would have happened at this time. I think eventually it would happen where, you know, they implement a big renovation. That's with any institution that needs to happen at some point in its lifetime.
Yeah, I mean,
but I wonder
we renovated in what, 2000?
2001.
Yeah. So I mean, like, you know, it's been 20 years, but like we had to. Also, every institution does eventually.
But I do think, like you pointed out before, maybe there's more of an urgency, or maybe they're more comfortable implementing this because that was such a huge feat, and it seems to have worked very well.
Yeah, very
and
well.
Very well received.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I was reading is that this is not the there's been reports of, like, you know, obviously like climate change is a huge issue, and there's worries about the river rising. And, you know, notably in 2016, there was a flood that reached the Louvre. And, you know, the way that it was described was the largest and most, you know, scary preservations of art since World War II, when the Louvre flooded in 2016. They had to move a lot of artworks in the basement of the building out immensely quick, you know, to save them. And I think they did a tremendous job from what I understand. I could be obviously missing details. It was 2016. But it's not just climate change that they have to worry about, because when it simply rains, museum goers have noticed that buckets are collecting water in the galleries. So like, you know, it's not just a future proofing, it's a now proofing, because there's, you know, without the tremendous effects of climate change, even normal rain is allegedly getting through. So that's not great.
No, it is not.
But, you know, in short, the kind of to, you know, I think put a bow on this, the Louvre is using its own funding, from what I understand, to make this happen. And there's not an official number associated with this, but think about it this way. They're giving the Mona Lisa its own exhibition, which probably means they're also going to like do some conservation on it, because whenever do they get to take it off the wall? The answer is never. It's going to take about 6 years. So they're projecting like 2031, the new entrance is going to be open. And it's allegedly going to cost north of 800 million euros. So pretty insane.
Yes.
But alas, speaking of costly things, Melissa, what story did you bring with us today?
My story I got from artnews.com, and
I would like to note, literally everywhere is reporting on this. Right now. It's
kind of I've seen it.
These are it's just funny that these two stories are happening at the same time, because they're both shaken up headlines.
Yes, I saw it on like the Washington Post and New York Times and everything. So this story
Hyperallergic talking about it,
is a domestic story. It's coming out of DC, and the title of the original article I found is "Smithsonian Institutions Will Close Diversity Offices," and this is coming off of an announcement of an executive order that Trump implemented very shortly after his inauguration, to end all like diversity programs, diversity, inclusion, accessibility.
Yeah.
And this specific announcement from the Smithsonian, it comes just 2 or 3 days after the National Gallery of Art in DC announced that it was canceling its diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, which that was the first major institution to comply with this executive order. And once that happened, there was a lot of question of if the Smithsonian Institution was going to follow suit.
Yeah.
Because technically the Smithsonian is not a part of the federal government, whereas the National Gallery is. So there was some question of if they would also comply with the order. And they have. There was an email sent out to its employees saying that it was going to close its diversity offices. And kind of everyone is talking about it. And
Yeah.
a lot of people have been talking about it even before these announcements from these institutions came out, just about the executive order itself.
Well, there's a couple executive orders going on right now, from what I understand. There's obviously the DEAI, the halting of those programs, but then there's also the hiring freeze, the federal government hiring freeze, which is affecting these institutions largely, which is pretty jarring. Yeah, that was also mentioned in this article, that these things are happening simultaneously. And for people who don't know, the Smithsonian Institution, it includes 21 national museums. So it's a conglomerate of these institutions, and it includes the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden, the National Portrait Gallery, the Air and Space Museum, the National Zoo. And so all of these institutions, where before the hiring freeze, across them all, there was about 40 job openings advertised on their various platforms and websites. Those postings have since been taken down. Yeah. I read, because I was doing some further reading on the Hyperallergic article that came out, and I don't know if that answers that question entirely, but from what I could read here, a spokesperson for the National Gallery of Art told Hyperallergic that employees at the NGA's DEI office had been, quote, reassigned to already vacant positions elsewhere in the museum. End quote. I did read something similar to that. I don't know if that fills everything, or if the 40 positions there are also part of the job freeze, the federal job freeze. But, on the bright side, those staffers weren't let go, hopefully. And are still, working within the institution, and they're, in new roles. But it's just, it's a strange time. And I will say that the Smithsonian, they did say that the organization will maintain its focus on visitor accessibility, whatever that entails. But they have removed any language relating specifically to diversity, equity, and inclusion programs from their website, as has the National Gallery of Art. Yeah. But, yeah. Changing times, and it kind of harkening back to the Louvre story. I think with President Macron saying that this is also a political battle. Obviously, this speaks to that. We're kind of in the conversations I had with Gail, or with Ira, talking about our mission statement. Art, fortunately or unfortunately, is not necessarily out of the crosshairs of political skirmishes. No. Art is inherently political, and it is powerful. And, I think about, we just did a video with one of our instructors, Christian. It's on our YouTube channel right now. It's a art education video. It's a how-to video, essentially, teaching people a pretty fun printmaking thing. I digress. She said, we were talking about her art, and her art is very climate focused, and it's very it's about the human nature of things and the human touch, and how she'll paint power plants and phone wires and stuff in these kind of vacant, almost deserted atmospheres, apocalyptic almost, and they're climate fueled. They're political in that way. They're social in that way. And we were talking during that video, and it made it into the video, so the conversation's there. But I asked her if the fires in LA were, were an inspiration, although morbid as is, but an inspiration nonetheless. And she was like, "Oh, absolutely. It's all of these climate disasters are." And when it comes to climate or, the politics of art in general, sometimes it takes artists to, refocus and shine light on, some of these hard conversations and hard topics that sometimes get lost in the fray or misunderstood. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough. It's not, it's not ideal, but alas, this is where we're at right now. And I think it's pretty important to note that here at MAM, our initiatives remain the same, our goals remain the same, our mission remains the same. We welcome the role that arts can play as a medium of observation, insight, education, articulation, and advocacy. We, try to provide a platform for focusing on challenging social issues through art and serving as a convener and engaged community advocate in addressing these challenges. I think the art that we show and, the stories that we tell really speak to that. I think it's important to, again, note our mission statement that we talked about with Ira, that through art, we create experiences that inspire, challenge, and foster community to shape our shared future. We stand by that and always will. And, just kind of to note like what we do, because the work that we do is inherently diverse and it's inherently, socially conscious and important. The Montclair Art Museum collects and exhibits and preserves and interprets American and Native American art. We've been doing it for 11 decades now, honoring the creative accomplishments of a diverse range of artists, past and present. Our vision and, our values are important to us. It's respect, it's collaboration, it's engagement in education, and obviously inclusion. It's very important for us, and we hope that our programs like the Art RX program that we're happy to be a part of with NJPAC is a testament to that. And yeah, so I don't know, do you have anything else to kind of note? I know I kind of just rambled on and on there, but yeah,
it can be a little demoralizing when you read something like this, but I think it is important to remember that institutions like the National Gallery, a majority of their funding comes from the federal government. It's about 80% of their funding. So while I think it's easy to kind of just paint them as, maybe the bad guy or get angry with them.
They're complicit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's important to remember the position that they are in and how I believe they are trying as well as they can to comply with this federal order, but also stay true to their institutions' initiatives and beliefs and goals and, values. And even though the Smithsonian receives less funding from the federal government, they still receive a significant amount as well. So they're kind of in the same
they're neighbors.
boat.
I mean, it's hard to imagine neighbors, that, the spotlight's not on them too.
Mm-hmm. But I still think that the people working there are just as dedicated to their work and their values and as they ever have been, maybe even more so. Yeah.
Well, Melissa, I think that is a good place to kind of put a bookend on this episode of our art news recap stuff.
Yes.
I guess, kind of like last episode, it's probably worth taking a moment to provide some updates about our institution and what we got going on, because we're news too, baby.
We're your local news.
Yeah, your local institution. We have a lot going on here, so it's important to provide that update for you guys too, because we're here, we're around. So on February 8th we have Nanette Carter, A Question of Balance opening. It's a really, really interesting and engaging, socially beckoning sort of show by obviously Nanette Carter. She's raised in Montclair. She's lived in New York, the extent of her adult life, but she is remarkable. Her work is really engaging. It's these really cool mylar works. If you don't know what mylar is, because I sure as hell did not know what mylar was either, it's kind of like an architecture grade, plasticky kind of, it's not really paper, but, surface that you can paint on and draw on and stuff. And she, collages these works that she paints on and sketches on, and will assemble them right on the wall that she's essentially doing the art on. It's really hard to describe, but the colors are vibrant and the shapes are fascinating, and it's really cool. And Nanette is just a really interesting character, and it's been a joy to get to know her as we've developed content around the show with her. So if you are interested in learning more about that, we have a video on our YouTube channel. You can just search the Montclair Art Museum. You'll find a video dedicated to the opening of that exhibition. And then I'm not sure when it's coming out, but there's also going to be a behind the exhibition video, which essentially is her talking directly to camera as she's working. It's really fascinating, and was really just a blessing to capture her in her mojo. Aside from that, we have a collection show coming. It's called A to Z. It's a snapshot of the last 25 years of our permanent collection at MAM. A lot of it are rare or undershown works that we've acquired over the past 25 years, so 2000 to 2025. There's some really remarkable names. Obviously, Sarah Z, as she's the namesake of the show. There's a Derek Adams. There's a Roy Lichtenstein. There's a Virgil Ortiz. The list goes on and on. It's a really phenomenal show. And then in partnership with that show, as a kind of supplementary addition, replacing A Shared Love, which is the collection of works owned by Terry and Carol Wall. They are remarkable. They're coming down, I believe, on the 16th or the 15th.
February 16th.
February 16th, they're coming down. But, if you have time to come see them, please see them. They're phenomenal. It's John Singer Sargent, Mary Cassatt, William Merritt Chase. Really, really incredible stuff. But that's coming down, and in its place is going to be this complimentary show called Platinum to Postcards, which is the same premise as A to Z, but photography. So there's some really cool stuff in there, including some personal Polaroids that Andy Warhol shot. So that's really, really, really cool. But yeah, we still got other shows going on. Interwoven Powers here. George Innes is here. That's getting a revamp pretty soon, in accordance with his 200th birthday. Shout out, George Innes. Happy birthday. Yeah, so that's what's going on. Melissa, do you have anything else? I'm winded.
No, it's just, this was fun.
Yeah.
And I do enjoy coming on the podcast, even though you were a little bit mean to me in today's intro.
I just, I get in my own head. Are you traveling anywhere? Or anything going on? Visiting any new museums?
I am currently trying to plan another trip to DC.
Another strike force. Yes. Oh my God.
With my friends, and going there for
a
longer weekend.
The same stretch of museums that you and I did back in December, or are you going to go to see some new stuff? What's the MO?
I think I'm going to try to go to some new stuff. I will try to, because my best friends, they haven't been to DC since the last time we went a couple years ago. So I try to ask them what they want to see, but they're always like, you're the museum person. You lived in DC. Like, take us anywhere.
Yeah.
So, but I'll try to get them. Maybe I'll go to the East Building of the National Gallery this time.
Yeah, I didn't make it there last time.
Yeah.
Very fun. I got nothing planned. I'm going to in I think March. Yeah, March. In March I'm going up to Vermont. I'm going to Burlington. So I might poke around and see if there's any galleries, or maybe there's let me Google this right now. I'm gonna get live on the pod. Burlington Art Museum. I'm keeping the clicking in.
Yeah, it's all part of the charm.
Fleming Museum of Art. Let's see. Burlington City Museum of Art Gallery. Oh yeah, it's a University of Vermont museum.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. Listen, I'm open for it.
Yeah, go.
The Zimmerle's great. That's Rutgers' museum.
Yeah, go see some emerging artists.
Yeah, I might just do that. Anyway, yeah, that was Maybe Actually Museums Are For Me. Thanks for sticking around to the end of this at the end of this messy ending of an episode. But alas, yeah, if you liked hearing us ramble about, you know, the news of the day going on in the museum industry, maybe we'll make more of these. We try to wait until there's some really bold headlines, but perhaps it could be a more frequent once a month type deal. Let us know, because the only way we're going to find out is if you review and rate this podcast, and please tell us, please review us, please rate us. It really helps, I swear. You know, you can follow us on Instagram. Our handle is Montclair. That's MAM Montclair. You can find us on, you can find us on TikTok. You can find us on YouTube. Like I said earlier, you can visit us in person. We're open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We have events going on all the time. Starting back up in March is Free First Thursday, which is a fun little night where the museum admission is free. There's food trucks and vendors and music and drinks. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, you could definitely, if you've never been before, that's a great chance to come check it out and see if you want to make this your, regular museum that you come check out and become a member of. We'd appreciate it. So anyway, like I said, this was Maybe Actually Museums Are For Me. Thank you, Melissa, for doing this with me. We will do more, and I'll be more confident about asking you and not so timid and scared.
You're welcome, Alex.
All right. We will talk to you next Wednesday at 10 a.m. when these episodes come out. So appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.